Yo, what's good, guys? We are back at it again with another MLB The Show video for you guys, and today is going to be a tier list going over all of the new content. You can see I've called it Team Affinity 1, Drop 3, but really it's just all of today's content and some cards that are now going to become available to the wide majority of you, to where I feel like they're worth ranking. So if this does help you build your DD team, your roster, your lineup, your pitching rotation, feel free to like and subscribe. We're going to keep this type of content going all year. And yeah, let's get into it. So first card, starting off with a banger, Aaron Loop. Not the Aaron Loop from last year, but in a meta where there are so many good lefty bats. He is absolutely awesome for that. I believe they took away his slider or slurve, I forget. So he still has the slurve, no slider, or I'm not sure what pitch he's missing, but last year obviously he had the 5-pitch mix. I've heard it's a slider. It doesn't make a ton of sense with that mix, but it very well could have been. Alan Trammell, cool little Tigers card, plays a lot of positions that he usually doesn't play, but just not a great card, doesn't have a ton of power. A lot of these cards I may have to click into just to see them attribute-wise. Andre Dawson, I don't think there's anything wrong with running this card. You can see his contacts are maybe a little low for what you want when 99s are kind of the meta, but that's more or less in line with most pitchers at the moment. Power against lefties is a little bit low, and then the clutch is a little bit low, but great fielder, and this is a faster Andre Dawson card. The funny thing about this guy is he has no quirks, which is crazy for a legend, because usually legends, they just kind of hand out quirks to. Andre has none. Pettit. So I have Pettit here. I think he's just A tier. If you're an all-star Hall of Fame player, he's probably just A tier. If you are a legend player, that's where I think he becomes an S tier. He just doesn't have a lot of great pitches to get righties out. If you are playing an opponent that isn't biting on that inside cutter, isn't respecting that inside sinker, he's going to struggle on lower difficulties. Obviously on legend, you can run it up, and he still has some good speed differentials, but just probably going to struggle on those lower difficulties. Kind of the same here actually with Trinan. This is not the Trinan card that we necessarily thought we were going to get. We thought we were going to get a 5-pitch mix Trinan with disgusting through 9s. You can see the hits are very good, the walks are relatively good, and the clutch is great, but only having 4 pitches, he's missing something. Be it, you know, a curveball. That may sound stupid because curveballs are the worst pitches in the game, but just something different. Really what he's missing is a circle change, but unfortunate, not quite on the tier of Trinan that we wanted. I think he's going to get hit around a decent amount, and we probably honestly got a reliever today that's a little better if you want a hard throwing righty. But if you want that cutter, he's one of the main guys with it. This Brad Miller card, a lot of people speculated that his contacts were going to be really bad. They're not. 102 against lefties, which is what people was worried about, and 109 against righties. 100, 125, absolutely mashes, great clutch, not a bad fielder, and plays a ton of positions. This Brad Miller card is honestly one of the better cards from this Team Affinity, and he is very decent. Brian Roberts, more or less the same. Most people are looking at this card to run him on the switch hitter team. You can see 107, 125, so exceptional contact. The power is a little bit low, which is tough. But, you know, with a Brian Roberts card, that's kind of what you expect. Great clutch, great fielder, and relatively fast. So, you know, more or less all you could want from Brian Roberts. If that is the archetype of second baseman you want, or you need a switch hitter, he can definitely do that for you. Brian Wilson. This card's just not very good. I think the first year he was in the game, he got a retro finest that was actually pretty decent. And ever since then, it's been poverty. I feel like they changed his pitch mix a little bit. Kind of a BP fastball, kind of a BP cutter, and then a slider and a 2-seam. So maybe if they gave him a sinker, you can make the argument they'd be halfway decent. But just 2-seam doesn't really move the needle. This Brian Reynolds, not super great, but he has a great swing and he makes a switch squad. So I'm not ranking him with the switch hitter team, but you put him on the switch hitter team, right? He's looking at 102 against lefties, 122 against righties. Still gonna lack a little bit of power here and there, but he's going to get, I believe, 112 clutch also, and he won't be a, you know, defensive liability. Has a great swing with breaking ball hitter. This is a really solid card. It's just, you know, you probably need to run him on the switch team, and if you run him on the switch team, he's probably up here. Definitely a card that you can use in ranked. Sabathia, I think he looks fine. Nothing like overpowering. I don't think he has outlier. Yeah, didn't figure. But you can see decent hits, really high control relative to what I thought he would get. So a decent fastball, decent slider, decent circle change, decent sinker, and a cutter. More or less the pitch mix you want. Honestly, he's pretty decent. I'll bump him up to S relative to this drop. I think he's not going to walk into everybody's team. It kind of depends on what you already have there as to if you want to use the CC or not. But he is a very good card, and you get him relatively easily from the collections. This Christian Walker, similar to this Brian Reynolds. If you are an All-Star Hall of Fame player, this card has most of what you would want. A little bit low against righties, does make the Nolan team. Probably looks insane on the Nolan team. So that's probably how you would run him, but decent enough contact against lefties. Pretty bad against righties for this point of the game, but awesome power. He has a nasty swing, and he has 122 clutch, so half the time the clutch will be active instead of the contact. Absolutely love Christian Walker. I think he has one of the best right-handed swings in the game this year. So this is a little sneaky budget card to watch out for. Very good card there. CJ Cron always has a slept-on swing. Actually, stat-wise, looks like a very usable first baseman. 118, 97, 106, 105, 116 clutch. So might age a little poorly. Again, makes Nolan team. Surprised how many of these cards make either Nolan or a different team. But CJ Cron looks really solid. I don't know how well he will age. As of right now, he is probably one of your better first base options. But in general, I don't know. He's a very tall batter also, so a lot of people don't like those. This Cliff Lee, probably B tier. If you are a legend player, right, and you run him with the Kershaw boost, S tier. It's going to be hard for you to find a pitcher that has control like this Cliff Lee does. On legend ranked, he is going to be a staple. Every other difficulty, probably going to be pretty BP. Probably not going to be very good on All-Star. You can probably get some innings out of him on Hall of Fame, but I'm not going to say he's going to be dominant the way he can be on Legend. So that's kind of what I'll say about him. Probably S tier on Legend. Every other difficulty, taking into account Hall of Fame and All-Star, definitely lower. LeMahieu, never a big LeMahieu fan. Don't really like his swing ever. It could be different this year, but you see contacts are great. Power's great. Clutch is great, and he's a good fielder. So if you are somebody that likes LeMahieu swing, he's probably A tier. Maybe you could even make the argument for S tier. But me personally, my bias, I'm bumping him down. He always kind of has a slow, jammable swing. So he's going to struggle against guys like Trinan. Edgar, this card's a pure DH. You can't really rank him as a third baseman. As a DH, I think he's fine. I believe he lacks power against one side. So you can see great contacts. Lacks a little bit of power against righties, but as far as a DH is concerned, has basically every quirk you'd want other than like unfazed. Makes the Nolan team also, so a lot of these guys are making the Nolan team, I'm noticing. Obviously, I'm not really ranking them with that into account. Eddie Escobar, this is probably the best team affinity card we got today. Honestly, maybe even the best card we got today. You can see this card is runnable without running the switch team. Like, you do not need to be running the Santana team to run this card. 117 contact left. That's awesome, especially because a lot of the better pitchers in the game are lefties. 101 against right, that's usable. Probably won't have any issues with 101 against right unless you're on Legend and you're facing somebody with really high hits. And then his power is in a great spot and his clutch is in a great spot. So they just kind of nuked his fielding. He's not the fastest player in the world, but he's nasty. Plays a lot of positions. He's got a lot of versatility. Probably wouldn't run him at shortstop. The problem is he has no quirks because his live series sucks because he's like a bronze nowadays. Take me back 2 years ago to the tops now, Eddie Escobar. He's close. He's close. I think his swing's a little different, and obviously he doesn't have any quirks. ED just has flaws, really. I believe he's unusable against righties. Yeah, so 84, 90 against righties. If you're on All-Star, you can make that work. 94 clutch. Always a fast player with good fielding. But kind of an All-Star demon card. If you're on All-Star, you can make him work. If you're on Hall of Fame or Legend, you're probably not touching this guy. Garrett Mitchell, throwback card. They are recycling a lot of cards. He used to have an absolutely amazing swing. I'm not sure what he looks like now. I don't think Showzone's going to pull this card up for me. So tough. Just going off memory, we're going to have to go B tier. just because I feel like that's the safest spot for him. I feel like he probably lacks a lot of power, but I could be wrong because Showzone's not pulling him up, and I have not memorized his stats exactly. Gary, I want to put this card in S tier. I think this might be the best year of Gary Sheffield's swing ever. He has a nice early leg kick. I feel like his bat gets around really quick. He's just really rough against lefties. He is amazing against righties, as you can see, 113, 120. So you can make the argument that having those inverse splits is nice because you either have the handedness advantage or you have the stats advantage. Obviously has a great clutch, not really a good fielder, but does make the Ortiz team. Has basically everything other than unfazed, so that's fire. I used this card in the Extreme Showdown. I don't think he got out one time. His swing is awesome, has a lot of good quirks. Very slept on card. It's just he lacks a little bit against lefties, and that being the dominant starting pitchers in the game at the moment. It's kind of hard to rank him a lot higher than that. Harmon, this is to me an all-star demon card. You can see 98, 102, so usable. Like, those are Hall of Fame numbers where you can use this card on Hall of Fame. Does make the Nolan team again. Nolan team got a lot of upgrades. Insane power. You can see decent clutch, decent fielder, first base. Really, the problem with him is always the swing. If you typically like Harmon swings, I think this card's usable. I don't think he is the top tier option at first base, but I think he's usable. This Wagner does everything you think he does. Other than his quirks actually aren't that good, and he lacks a lot of power. You can see power lefties, that's usable power, that's decent enough. Power against righties is a little rough. Clutch is decent, obviously fast, fields very well, plays a good amount of positions, has a lot of positional versatility. I think he's fine, and the fact that he can play a ton of positions and fit in a lot of people's team is awesome. There's almost always going to be a weak spot where you could fit this Honus in, but just not really the greatest card on paper. If you traditionally like his swing, he'll probably be pretty good. Renfroe, this is another kind of just all-star demon card. If you are an all-star player, I will not argue with you running this card. 106 against lefties, 91 against right. Max out power, which is nasty. Clutch is relatively bad, and good fielder, a little bit slow. So doesn't really make any insane teams. Does make Buxton team, so again, all-star demon card, but I wouldn't probably use him past that, especially with the uptick we're about to see in good pitchers. Kinsler, wow, I mean, they did this card so dirty. This might be one of the worst statted 99s I've ever seen in my life. 93 contact, 89 against righties, 107 power against lefties, 92 power against righties. The power lefties is the only stat he has over 100. Really sucks. Only has dead red, so it's not like the quirks are going to carry him. Yeah, he has a really good swing, and he'll field his position relatively well. But this is Craig Biggio. Might as well have just given us a Craig Biggio at this point, because and he would have had better contact. So that's a really unfortunate card. Just not really somebody I can recommend using. Areta, I think this card looks really good. I'm gonna have to see the through nines. So 112, 95, 101 with max out clutch and a relatively good pitch mix. It's not the most elite. You can see he has slider slurve. So, you know, maybe on a difficulty like Legend, he'll be really good. Other difficulties, you'd much rather have a cutter. I think he's good. I think the hits put him up there. No outlier really hurts. I feel like you really need outlier on those lower difficulties. He's between S and A. I'm kind of biased. He's one of my favorite players I've ever had the privilege of watching. So I'm going to put him in S, but, you know, you can go either way. Bagwell, I'm not too sure what his stats look like. Obviously, his swing is trash. He's, you know, universally renowned for having one of the worst swings in the game. 125, 105, 91, 102. And he's a first baseman, so that's all you really care about. He's fine. Stat-wise, he's fine. It's just the swing. He always has a poo-poo swing. It's always bad. I did his moment, and I can attest that it's not very good. It's usable, but, you know, when you look at some of the other guys you can play at first in this Team Affinity drop, why use him? Jim Evans, good as like a platoon DH probably, and he's a good fielder. He's just really slow, so he's not going to cover too much ground out there. But you can see 121, 120 against righties, but the clutch sucks, the contact left sucks, and the power left sucks. So really, I don't know what you really do with this card. The quirks are great, and he always has a good swing. But again, a really underwhelming Team Affinity card. not really somebody I could ever recommend using. Rollins, he's the first XP boss I'm going to rank, just because I think a lot of people are going to get them this weekend, if not next weekend. Obviously, you know, Mother's Day and whatnot. Not everybody's going to get to play the game a ton this weekend, but I think a lot of people are going to get there, if not through the double XP, through the increased XP. I think the event in and of itself has like 30 to 50,000 XP available, plus all the gameplay XP you're going to get while getting to that point. The event easily has 50,000 plus XP available right now. So I think a lot of people are going to get there. Ranked has a good amount. BR has a large amount. So there's a ton of new XP available in the game. Season awards. So there's a ton of ways to get them. So I figured I would rank them. Cueto. This card looks good. His hits are actually really high. The problem is he's probably going to get lit up on like All-Star. You can see his control isn't necessarily as high as you'd like, but having that high of hits and clutch is very nice. Always kind of has a funky delivery, and obviously has a very meta pitch mix every year. On Legend, this dude's going to be awesome. On Hall of Fame, he's going to be very good. On All-Star, he's just going to be another pitcher, and that's going to be what it is. So I think with that being said, probably move him down a little bit, but you know, probably splitting the hairs at that point amongst him and Areta Besid, one of the better cards we got today. I would much rather have them, you know, brought his contacts down to even 120, right? 120 to where you don't have to run the switch team. You can, you know, just run him. And if you superfractor him, then he would get max contact and then put those extra attributes into the power. But, you know, it is what it is. 120 clutch does not benefit at all from the switch hitter team, really. If you're looking at a superfractor Besid, doesn't really benefit at all. Probably does benefit from the Ortiz team. I believe Ortiz does give some power. You can see quirks, not the greatest, but honestly has one of the best swings I've used all year. His gold card is an absolute machine in co-op, so I can only imagine how good this card's going to be, but it's a shame. Most people will not experience that card for a minute. Jurickson Profar, this card is insane. As far as a free card is concerned, I'm going to put some parallels on him because he is a free card, and I feel like most people will get probably close to superfractoring this card. 107, 125. Awesome numbers. 98, 91 power. Awesome. He already has max clutch, I believe. He's a gold fielder at every position, assuming you put some parallels on him. So that's awesome. Has good arm strength, great reaction, and he's not super slow. So this card's awesome. Where he's really going to shine is apparently he makes the Seiya team. That's interesting. But where he'll really shine is on the Santana team. Basically going to be a max contact, max clutch guy with decent enough power. Basically another Santana. And his swing is one of the better swings I think I've used all year. He has a really good swing, so cannot say enough about that card. Cary Wood, this is probably going to be a very solid card. I think he's going to be very reminiscent to his the card that came out like the Extreme program last year, I want to say, or something like that. Signature, I don't know, I forget what he had last year. This is basically a carbon copy of that. If you enjoyed that card last year, you're going to like this card. Has some good speed differentials with that very slow changeup, the cutter, and the four seam. So this is basically Rob Dibble as a starter. So big fan of Cary Wood. If you are on All-Star, if you are on Hall of Fame, this guy's probably going to be a must-have. On Legend, you can make the argument either way for whether or not you'd want to use them. So probably S tier, to be honest. Probably one of the better options. Can struggle with control, but you know, you still have guys out here running Shohei. So what's that really say? Speaking of struggling with control, Singa should not anymore, I believe. Yeah, this card has 89 walks and makes the Kershaw team. So you are actually looking at like a minimum of 115 hits through 9. If you are running the Kershaw team and you want more of a righty starting pitcher, you got this guy and you got DeGrom now, so that's two really good options. He's solid, does not have outlier, so again, may struggle on All-Star, may struggle a little bit on Hall of Fame, but on Legend he's going to be nasty, especially if you boost up that hits through 9. But obviously unboosted, I think he's just really solid. Living Like Larry, you can't want too much more. You would like a little more power against lefties. You can see 116, 121, basically a max contact hitter. Does contribute to the Kershaw team, which is cool. Yeah, so power lefty, pretty bad. Power righty, very good. Decent enough clutch. High fielding, and he's relatively fast. He's not slow for an outfielder. So I think he's a really good option. Is he going to be in my outfield come the very end of the season? Maybe, maybe not. Not too sure. I'd probably rather run Profar over him, just personally. But I think a lot of people will really enjoy this Larry Walker. Obviously has a lot of quirks. Lou Brock, not a big fan of this card. If you are in that subset of players where you're an all-star player, relatively hard stuck all-star player, and when you get to Hall of Fame, you start to really struggle. And it's not really the differentials as much as it is the PCI accuracy and just having a smaller PCI, then this guy will work for you. And, you know, same goes if you're a Hall of Fame player that struggles on Hall of Fame, this will work for you. Does get the Kershaw boost, which will help his power out a little bit, but still, you're basically running a fast Stephen Kwan, which I can never necessarily recommend. Does have a decent enough swing, but just not really what you want necessarily in my eyes. Giolito, we're just gonna skip D tier and go straight to F. Joe Random pitch mix, the only thing remotely and really not that great through nines. Really, the only thing saving this card is his release. His release is a little funky, but you can see Joe Random pitch mix, 4-seam, circle change, slider, 12-6. If SDS was just assigning default pitch mixes, he would have the default. F is probably harsh just because he has a little bit of a funky delivery, but it does not save that card whatsoever. I don't see any reason to use him. This is probably another card I don't see any reason to use. The new event reward, Matt Olson, you can see absolutely abysmal against lefties, not very, like, decent enough against righties. Very good power, but his clutch sucks, right? That's kind of always been the thing with Matt Olson the past year and a half, 2 years. Is he can have some cards that come out sometimes that have lower-ish contacts, but always his clutch is really high. This one does not have that really high clutch, so unless you really, really enjoy his swing, I don't see any reason in running that card. Max Clark, just fine, I guess. Very comparable to Holness. Has worse power than Holness, but he's a little bit faster, I believe. You can see 100, 111, 73 power left. That is a problem. 88 power right, decent enough clutch, great fielder, really fast. So no quirks, but you know, he's fine. He's kind of reminiscent of the card we got last year where it was him or Dylan Cruz was a lot of people's center fielder. He's very similar to that card, has less power. If you like those speedy, fast center fielders, this is, you know, somebody I can endorse, unlike like a Lou Brock, somebody like that. Schmitt, fine. His swing always kind of sucks. 103, 85, good power against lefties, not awesome against righties, bad clutch, good fielder. He's fine. He's fine. If he made the Arenado team, that would be something, I guess. But then, you know, they play the same position, him and Arenado, so not really a card I could suggest using. If you want to use him, you can make him work. But, you know, most people probably shouldn't. The new schemes sucks. This is really unfortunate. I saw this card, I got kind of excited. So more or less middle of the road hits. By the end of the season, we'll probably see some starters with some better hits than this. Ks are really high, not really a stat that matters. Walks are relatively low for a 99 overall starter. Great pitching clutch, but really the problem is his pitches. They gave him a Vulcan change for some reason. Don't know why they did that. Is what it is. And then slurve and slider. So they took away his cutter, which is kind of what made the other one really good. I'm sure this one's outlier works because he's a chase card and he's like 200k. But just not that great. So if you really like the one last year and for some reason didn't like having a cutter on the one this year, then you'll like this card. Maybe he'll, you know, have some value on Legend just because you can throw the slider and the slurve and shrink PCIs. But on every other difficulty, he's fine. He's just another outlier starter. Definitely a little bit overpriced at this point. The card art is very clean, but we are not ranking cards based off the card art, or else this Prince Fielder would probably be higher. This card's fine. 91 against lefties, that's lower than you want. 112 right, 100 left, 125 right, 105 clutch, kind of balances out the low contact from the other side, and obviously has a lot of good quirks. I almost want to drop him. I don't think his bat's that good, honestly. I don't think anybody's going to use this fielder. I'm sure he does qualify for the Ortiz team, right? No. Yeah, he does. Okay. So he does make Ortiz. Maybe on Ortiz he's really good, but again, that's why I don't rank these cards based on the captains that they qualify for. Gossage, this is kind of who I hinted at with Trinan earlier. Probably going to be better than Trinan. A Goose with halfway decent control. You can see he has 95 walks. I'm not sure what his pitching control is, but this card will be just as good, if not better, than Blake Trinan. Four-seam, slurve, sinker, changeup. So the traditional kind of Goose mix we've been accustomed to. His slurve's going to be absolutely filthy this year with shrinking PCIs and whatnot. I think I'd prefer him over Trinan, just personally. Obviously, Trinan does have the outlier sinker, whereas Goose has the outlier fastball. So it's really what do you want? For me personally, I find more value usually on outlier fastballs. Robin Yount, this might be the best Robin Yount we've ever had. He's still not super great. 125, 107, 76, 85. Max out clutch. Good fielder. Relatively fast. Not a bad card. If you like kind of those Cal Ripken Jr. type of shortstops, this is probably the best one you're going to get this season until like a Cal or like a Carlos Correa, somebody like that comes out. If you like those bigger, more defensive shortstops, Robin Yount can be your guy. But not really an awesome card that I'd recommend everybody have. Helsley kind of goes in that like Edwin Diaz tier where like it's an outlier pitcher that has 3 pitches and you pretty much know what he's going to throw every time. It's just a matter of if you can hit it or not. So not really a good pitcher. Can get you some good innings on like all-star against bad players, but against good players, not really a great card there. Ryan Ludwig, just solid, just all-around solid card. I believe he does make Ortiz. You can see does make Ortiz, does contribute to the Kershaw boost. 97, 108, 102, 105, 117 clutch. Like that clutch is his highest hitting attribute. That's a very nice thing to have. Decent fielder, decently fast. I believe he plays a good amount of positions. So every outfield position, so not really. He's fine. Has good quirks. Definitely usable. Definitely usable. If you're running the Ortiz team, he's not bad. Samuel Basallo. This card is relatively mid. I don't really love using a lefty spot on a catcher. You can see this guy is not going to load either. Basically, I'll give you the rundown. Good defensive catcher. I think he's relatively fast, and pretty much all of his hitting stats are 100 across the board. So he's fine. He's just very mid. He's inoffensive. If you want to use one of your lefty spots in your lineup on him instead of a guy like Babe Ruth or Larry Walker, or keep naming lefties, then you can, but I don't think it's worth it. Not really my cup of tea. Sandy, this card's good in theory. I think a lot of people are going to hit him because he had like a finest like last year or 2 years ago that a lot of people used. So I think a lot of people are used to him. He had the finest, he had the all-star card. Relatively high walks, but I can tell you personally from using him that the sinker par on All-Star is relatively big. So I'm pretty sure on Hall of Fame and Legend it's going to get even bigger. And he's not going to be the control freak that you think he is. You are pretty much relying on that overpowering sinker. Does not necessarily have a great circle change or slider or any tertiary pitch. He's kind of the Nolan Ryan of 5-pitch pitchers, where you are really relying on that outlier sinker to put in work. And if your opponent can't hit that, you're going to have a great outing with him. If they can hit it, you're not going to have fun. So very volatile pitcher. Sean Murphy. This card's stats, I'm pretty sure, are very mid. You can see 99, 96, 83, 94. But really, you get Murphy for the defense. His swing is crazy good. It's up there with like Christian Walker. It's just Murphy has probably better stats. I don't know. I think Christian Walker deserves to come up. I don't think he's in a group with these guys. I don't know if Brian Reynolds really in a group with these guys. But Murphy has a great swing. Always has a good swing. Super quick. One of the quicker righty swings. Just a little unfortunate that stats aren't that great. So, Skubal. I do not know how well this card's going to age. So you can see 105 hits is, more or less towards the bottom of starting pitchers when everybody's scaled to a 99. But he always has a good pitch mix. He throws relatively hard this year. Obviously doesn't have outlier, but he is running his four seam up 97, 98, 99, maybe even 100. And he has great control. And his control actually matters, unlike Sandy. So I think it'll be good if you usually like screwball cards. This one's going to be very good. Obviously makes the Kershaw team, so that's going to help his hits out a little bit. But again, just another very solid, dominant lefty starting pitcher to add to the team. Glavine, I wanted this card to be good. Okay, cold, new window, I guess. He just throws a lot of junk, honestly. He throws sinker, circle change, sweeping curve, slider, cutter. So really most of the time you're relying on the sinker, the slider, and the cutter. And then these two pitches are very similar speed-wise. They are both abysmally slow. They are both really slow. So you're going to have to be careful when pitching with him. He's not going to be the greatest in the world, but he's definitely usable. And if you traditionally like Glavine cards, this one is very good. I'm not sure if he's on the level of that like Mets collection one from years ago, but he is still all right. Tom Henke, Stinky Henke, just always suffers from a really poor pitch mix. Basically, he is Felix Bautista, has an outlier four seam, forkball instead of a splitter, and then a slider. So if you like those guys that are like Felix Bautista, like Rob Dibble, people like that, he's not bad. Just not really a great card either. Trevor Story, this is an easy S tier for me. Stat-wise, he's a little underwhelming. You can see 116 against lefties. Against lefties, he's perfect. 100 against righties, 101 power against righties. So very average, middle of the pack against righties, but has awesome clutch to kind of make up for it. Amazing fielder. Arm strength is a little suspect, but the reaction and the fielding and the fact that he's tall and he's relatively fast, he is probably the best defensive shortstop we have in the game right now, especially after you put some parallels on him. And you can see that this card actually has secondaries. Usually they do not like to put secondaries on story cards, but this one can play short, second, third. So that is a good amount of versatility for him, and always has one of the better right-handed swings. If you are sad because Trout is basically unusable now, get this Story because you're going to love his swing. They are very similar swings. Big fan of Story. Rogers, I think he's, A tier. He has his place. If you need a absolute control freak righty that can put the ball in a corner every single pitch, this is your guy. If you're maybe not the greatest at pinpoint, probably not your guy, because if you hang anything down the middle with this guy, it's going to be long gone. It's basically BP. You might as well put it on a T for your opponent. But if you are somebody who knows how to kind of abuse pinpoint and abuse Tyler Rogers, you can really put the ball in the corner every time because his control is so high, and he throws really slow, and it seems like the slower you throw, the smaller your pars are. So he can really put the ball in a corner every single pitch, and that's kind of his niche. Boggs, fine. I think when you look at all these other guys, they're probably better than him at their respective positions. Being a first baseman, I guess you could play him at third, but for me, he's more first. Has some good quirks, doesn't have a bad swing, has awesome contact and clutch, 78 power left, 85 right. Basically, he's a first baseman with no power. So if you kind of like that archetype, or if you want to run him at third over some other guys, then you can, but I don't think it's necessarily the best way to go. Winsell Perez, very good on the switch hitting team. That's kind of the caveat. Without it, I think he's very mid. He's like hundreds across the boards hitting wise. 109, 90, 100, 100, 108 clutch. Not a very good fielder, kind of fast. So again, you put him on the switch hitting team where he has like 120 contact left and like 100 against righties and like 115 clutch or whatever, then he gets a lot better. But basically, unless he's on the switch team, I think he's fine. Relatively inoffensive. You can definitely get away with him at some low ranks or even on low Hall of Fame play. But, I think there's better options that you could be running. Whit Merrifield, this might be the most disrespected card of this drop. He is very solid. He has a very nice swing. You can see he can play a ton of positions. You are looking at 109 left, which is relatively good, especially because you'll have the handedness advantage against lefties. 125 right, very good. 92 power left, that's right where you want to be. The problem is the 77 right, but he does have max out clutch to make up for that. It can get to a diamond fielder at all of his positions. Yeah, you'll have to super factor him, but the fact that he can get there to start with is a very nice place to be. And he's relatively fast. 40 stealing on a Whit Merrifield card is kind of criminal. Don't know how they came up with that number, but he is a very, very overlooked card, and I'm a big fan of that swing. You might say, well, why him and not Boggs? Boggs plays first and third, two positions where you want power bats. You can put this Whit Merrifield at second, and you won't be losing any power over guys like Altuve and some of the other more top-end second base options. And then Stargell. This card is pretty decent, I believe. I know he has like every hitting quirk. Dead red, breaking ball. So not everyone. You'd like to see probably unfazed or something. And he's definitely not an outfielder. He's definitely a first baseman or a DH. But you can see 102 against left, 121 right, 103 left, 125 right with max out clutch and a gold shield, assuming you get him superfractored. This card's pretty nasty. He's not bad. If you guys remember I guess that was Willie McCovey. But if you enjoyed that, like Willie McCovey from the Easter pack, this is basically the exact same guy. Another power hitting first base lefty guy. If you want to work him in the lineup, if you like those kind of old timey like 70 swings, then he can be very solid for you and should absolutely mash. And his stats against lefties aren't so bad that that you have a good swing and bad stuff happens. So I do like him. I do think he's all right. I do not think he would be my top tier option, but I think he is definitely usable. And then I think I'm relatively happy with that. S tier is basically flawless cards or cards that are good enough in their own right. Brad Miller's awesome if you're on, All-Star or Hall of Fame. Roberts is great if you need those control guys. And then I don't think anybody here is too crazy to mention. Maybe on Legend, you can make the argument Cary Wood goes down. Maybe you could make the option Skubal is an S tier without like the Kershaw boost. And you can definitely argue that Arrieta shouldn't be here, but I think for the most part, relatively happy with this. It's not too bad. And yeah, guys, that's going to be Team Affinity. Be on the lookout for updated positional tier lists coming the rest of the week, culminating with the top 50 tier list. So hopefully you guys look forward to that. Till next time, peace.